Are you a confidant, an upstander or a champion? The BBC thinks these are labels that work for its employees. Its diversity department has produced a new online test to assess the privilege of staff who are paid to work for the licence fee-funded broadcaster. There are 20 questions. Cunningly, the exercise is put into the format of an exciting online car race. And the car with the most privilege wins the race. Well, the questions include questions like these. Does your player identify as white? And does your player feel able to express their sexuality in the workplace? So Super Mario, it is not. The online tool also describes 7 personality types, or allies. One is described as an upstander. This is someone who, quote, shuts down, reports and pushes back on offensive jokes and inappropriate comments, even if no one's hurt by them. Another is a champion who, quote, voluntarily defers to colleagues from underrepresented groups in meetings, events and conferences. The BBC licence fee costs £159 per year, by the way. Let's turn to Tom Slater, Deputy Editor of Spiked. It's free, Tom. You'll contradict me if that's not true. There's certainly no licence fee. Tom, what do you make of this? There's something slightly, it seems to me, without wanting to put words into your mouth, something ever so slightly sinister in dressing up agitprop and a bit of social engineering in the form of a child's game.
Well, I think it just betrays how patronising this kind of woke politics is, really. Because, I mean, as you say, this is something, the sort of resource you can imagine them rolling out in a preschool, and yet this is something which is being given to adult BBC staff. I mean, it turns out that they actually produced this in-house. That's one of their defences. You know, we didn't outsource this to some really expensive diversity training company. But if anything, that seems to me a little bit worse, that this kind of deeply patronising racialist politics is just embedded in their training programmes. And it's something which I wish I could say I was surprised. I mean, I kind of assumed that the BBC would be up to this kind of thing. But it really just does show how total the kind of takeover of an institution like the BBC is by what remains a very divisive, and as it turns out, in this case, a very silly form of politics and workplace training.
Tom, for the uninitiated, just explain what we mean by allyship. I mean, anybody who works in the public sector or works for a big blue chip corporation, private company, will have heard of this by now, I imagine, but that's not all of our viewers. What does it mean?
So essentially, these training programs aim to make you a better ally, by which they mean you're better equipped to stick up for the ethnic minority or the LGBT people on your staff or your colleagues, etc. But the content of these training things, it's almost like it's teaching you how to interact with these strange, exotic people. If you look at the BBC example, you know, saying how you must give space for them to talk about their lived experience, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. The champion form of ally is actually referred to as someone who defers to ethnic minority people. So this is really about not treating your colleagues or people you work with or people who work for you as equals, as human beings. It's about treating them something other, different, strange, something to be tiptoed around and people to be looked after almost. You know, you're there to kind of shield them from offence and any potentially tricky situations they might find themselves in. So it presents itself as ever as something very cuddly and very nice. But I think really what undergirds it is a deep paternalism, almost like a kind of neo-colonial relationship between the white staff and the ethnic minority staff, it feels like.
And what it adds to, it seems to be, Tom, is a sense in which the little slab of ice on which the uncommitted could stand. You know, somebody who wants to just work at the BBC, maybe make TV programmes, make tea, I don't know, edit videotape, whatever it is. There's plenty of people doing all kinds of jobs at the BBC. But the idea they can turn around to anybody and say, look, I don't want to do this, OK? I don't want to consider allyship. I just want to do my job, making whatever. The little bit of ice they're standing on is every year just shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. Ignorance is no longer a defence in the eye of this kind of law.
I think that's exactly it. How would you dissent in a situation like this? Because the problem with these workplace training things is that it's essentially pushing a form of identity politics, but dressing it up as kind of neutral, politics-free, objective training, like it's health and safety or something like this. So if you're in a situation where, again, you could be new to the job, you could not necessarily have a position where you can voice your dislike of this kind of thing, how would you possibly do it? And I think that's the point in which these training programs become much more sinister, as you were saying at the beginning, because they are trying to inculcate a certain way of thinking in a certain set of people. And, you know, we've also got to remember that this is the BBC. I mean, they're paying to produce this stuff themselves. It's being promoted by June Sarpong, who's their kind of equalities creative director, who's got, from what I can tell, was one of the best part-time jobs in the country. She makes £267,000 for working 3 days a week. And you just think with that aspect to it on this world, it just makes it seem even more inappropriate that this taxpayer-funded institution is spending so much money on indoctrinating its own workforce, effectively.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.